First of all, let me apologize for last Friday. I had a couple of deadlines, and I also had not been feeling well that week, so I had to skip our class. But fortunately, we were slightly ahead of others, so we are okay and good to go. So I think the last time we met, we started by looking at research philosophy, not so? Hello?
Yes, madam.
Okay, I think the last time we met, we looked at research philosophy, yeah? So let us continue with the nature of research. We want to look at types of research. So let me share my screen. Just give me a minute. So today we want to look at research types. I hope you can all see my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, madam.
Okay, so this is a continuation of the lecture on research types. So we want to look also on nature of research. So we looked at the onion in research, where we saw research philosophies, then research approaches, research methods. Although we haven't touched on it, this is going to be the next lecture after this one, which looks at research methods, and then we shall see research tools. So today we want to look at types of research. So this is a very short lecture, not very long. And then I will leave you, I will upload an article for you to go through on Moodle. So research types. In the most generic sense, all our research falls under a certain type of research. Again, just like the nature of research in philosophy, this is not something that we state specifically and say, oh, my research is going to be descriptive, or it's going to be basic or applied. It is implied. This is one of the things that guides us. However, one of the things we most of the time need to identify is whether our research is qualitative or quantitative. That is one of the most common, but normally we start with our research either being basic or applied. Now we're going to look at each of these in detail. So whether it's basic or applied, all other research, these that we see here, descriptive, analytical, qualitative, and quantitative, conceptual, empirical, they fall under basic research. Either it's basic research or applied research. But let us discuss each in detail. We start with basic. Yeah. It's normally referred to as fundamental or pure research. Fundamental or pure research. This kind of research is quite rare for most of us. It's quite rare. It's not something that you'll find yourself actually carrying out research. It is normally driven by the scientist's curiosity or interest in a certain scientific question. There must be some kind of curiosity that has been aroused by the scientist. In other words, normally it's not, the main motivation is not normally something that is needed within the research world that needs to be known. Take an example. When COVID-19 hit, the scientists who went ahead to research on COVID-19 did not do so out of curiosity, but out of necessity. there was a real need to answer the question of COVID-19, the virus. How does it spread? How does it affect the body? What are the medicines that can cure it? Vaccines, what vaccines can work on it? What should be the genetic makeup of the vaccines, and so on and so forth. So that was for sure not basic research, because there was an immediate need. And most research, there is a need. For most of us, we are doing research because we are doing our dissertations, we need to get a degree, we need to ascertain that there's a certain research problem within a certain research community. So it's rarely basic research. Yeah. Now, normally, basic research is driven by development with a need to develop a theory, a method, or systems that advance knowledge. Yeah, so usually it is there to develop some kind of conceptual model which will drive other researchers. Normally that is basic research. On the other hand, we have applied research, which is there to solve practical problems of the modern world. There to solve practical problems of the modern world. Now, remember the article that I gave you, multitasking? You all remember it?
Yes, madam.
And what practical problem was it solving? Or where could it be applied to solve a practical problem? Hello?
Madam, for example, during driving while using a phone.
Yes, yeah. So such kind of research could be used by lawmakers to put laws that prohibit drivers from using phones while they are driving, or carrying out or operating any heavy machinery. That kind of research could actually be applied for a practical problem. Now, normally also most of the research we do in ICT is normally to solve a practical problem in the modern world. So unlike applied research, which is looking at developing theories, methods, and things like that, this one is there to solve practical problems. Although there are also theories, one developing a theory can still solve a practical problem. That is not to say that is not the case. So the applied research investigates how effective your activities are. So for example, you create a website, you create a system, and then you carry out research to find out how effective is it at maybe improving a certain business process, or achieving a certain business goal or objective. You investigate how effective is it at doing ABCD. Yeah, so that is typically IT research. Do you have any questions so far? Is there any question? Okay, so I'm going to take it that silence means consent. Yes, please? No, no question.
I have a question. I wanted to have a.
Yes, please, Douglas, continue. Sorry, you don't have a question?
recap on applied. I kind of had wanted to have a recap on applied research.
Applied research. Okay.
Yeah.
What was it that wasn't clear?
Actually, madam, I've quite attended, I've quite entered the lecture late, so I wanted some explanation, some enlightenment.
Okay, did you understand basic research?
Yes, madam.
Why don't we do this? Why doesn't each one of us go to Google and search what is basic research? Let us all get involved. What is basic research?
Okay, madam. But also my question is like on applied research, does it involve critical thinking? Because I see like it looks more, you need to think a lot. Okay, like do you need to involve critical thinking? Or it's not applicable there.
Are you saying applied research?
Yes, applied research.
Applied research. Now, all research requires critical thinking. All research. Why? Remember how you're starting your research problem, whether it is basic research or applied research, you're determining where there is a research gap, something that is unknown or is lacking. Okay, all research requires critical thinking. All research. Now, let me just give you an example. When we look at basic research and we think the main motivation is to expand one's knowledge, yeah, we may be thinking, okay, maybe basic research is, let's say Sheba wants to know more about how to program with AI. So she goes about to find out how to do that. Would we call that research? Because one, it would be a curiosity on my part. I want to find out how to program using AI. Would you call that research? Would that fall under basic research?
Yes, madam. Because to me, since you're going to find out, it means you're going to use materials which are already in place to also make your own research or maybe improve and make something better. Something I believe is basic.
Okay, let me answer that one right away. No, it's not research. Research of any kind must be bringing new knowledge. Now, this is something I must emphasize for all of you. Research must be bringing about new knowledge to a research community, not to you as an individual, but to a research community, whether it's basic research or applied. It must be bringing new knowledge. Let me give you an example. Okay. Let us say, let me give you an example. We have system development methods, do we not? Yeah?
Yes, madam, we do.
We have system development methods. Can you give me some examples of system development methods?
There's the waterfall development, spiral development, and agile software development.
Okay. Now let us say if one of you decides to find out how these methods were developed. Who developed them in what contexts? Okay. Maybe you got to find out the history behind these, the history behind these methods. And then you find out, I'm just assuming, I'm making assumptions, and then you find out all of them were developed from a European context and in economies that are highly advanced. And then one says that these methods are probably one of the reasons why we don't design systems that are sustainable for developing contexts, maybe for ICT 4D. Do you all know what ICT 4D are? Is there anyone who doesn't know what ICT 4D are? You can even Google it as I talk.
And I'm like principle of what principle of DR?
ICT 4D.
Okay, madam.
Have you found out what ICT 4D are? What are they?
Information and communications technology for development.
Exactly.
Which is a practice of using technology to assist poor and marginalized people in developing communities.
Yes, thank you, Linda. Thank you. So in other words, these are ICTs or IT applications or systems or whatever, like any other, but they are specifically applied to a developing context. So for example, if a system is developed for a health facility in a poor area, systems that are to help maybe doctors who are in very marginalized health facilities, or ICTs which are applied to schools in rural areas, or anything, any ICT that is meant to help or to support development processes. So what if someone said, okay, we need to develop a system development method that is specific, that will help an IT professional develop a system for a developing context. And you may not find that there's actually been a demand for it, but someone just sits down and says, no, we need to figure out a method which is specific. And that researcher decides to say, let me study the unique environment in a developing context, and I develop a method, a system development method that is unique. Now, that person is bringing forth new knowledge, but it isn't that ICT 4D designers have not, will stop you, were not using methods before. They were. Okay? They were using the existing ones, the ones that you listed out, the spiral methods and so on and so forth. But this method in itself is not yes, it does solve something. It can come in as a practical help for those ICT for D designers, but it's not necessarily an immediate need that is out there. So that is what we refer to as basic research. However, let me even give you some examples of basic research. Look at the situation of evolution, which was the theory of evolution, which was brought about by Darwin's theory of evolution. That is a typical example of basic research. It isn't practical, it's not solving a practical world problem, but it explains, it helps to explain life in general. Do you get what I'm saying? The example of Darwin's theory of evolution. I hope you all know Darwin's theory of evolution. Do we know Darwin's theory of evolution?
Yes, madam.
Yes. So Darwin's theory of evolution is a typical example of basic research. Okay? Now, when we come to applied research, you're solving practical problems. An example would be the research that was done by COVID-19 scientists. Okay? COVID-19 scientists. Or let me give another example. If one of you decided to develop a smartphone mobile app, which can help to, let us say, scan a baby in the womb, so that a doctor in a rural health facility, or any healthcare worker in a rural health facility can use it to scan and see how the baby is in the womb. That application should be able to help doctors or health workers who are in areas where you won't be able to find a scanner, or it's not affordable for a healthcare facility in rural areas to own a scan. So you develop a mobile app which can help to do that. Okay? There are other situations. I've actually seen a master's thesis where somebody developed an app on the phone which could help to determine crop diseases, certain crop diseases, especially those which attack crops like maize. So that application is on the mobile phone, but a farmer or even an extension worker can visit a field, take pictures, and that application can help to scan and determine, oh, this is the disease that has infected your maize. You can therefore use ABCD to clear this pest or this pesticide. You can use this pesticide to clear this pest or something like that. That is solving a practical world problem. Does this make sense to you when I explain it that way? I remember, Douglas, you had that question. Does it make sense or not yet?
Yes, madam, it does.
Okay, so I hope it makes sense for everyone. Eh?
Yes, madam, it does, I think.
Okay. Now, whether our research is basic or practical, our research can either be descriptive or analytical. Yeah, it can either be descriptive or analytical. So descriptive research is basically fact-finding. There is something that is unknown or it's not yet clearly understood, and you wish the researcher is there. The objective is to give a description of the state of affairs as the situation is. Yeah, that is the purpose of the researcher, to provide a description of the state of affairs about a phenomena, a context, something that is yet unknown. For example, the researchers who went out to find out how COVID-19 spreads, or the researchers who try to find out, the lab researchers who try to find out the genetic makeup of the COVID-19 virus. That was purely descriptive research, because they, at a certain one point, people didn't know how COVID is spread, or how COVID looks like, the virus itself, how it looks like. But now there's no point in somebody trying to find out how it looks like, because we already know. Or if a new mutation comes up, a new COVID-19 mutation comes up, then it is the job of, now the job of a researcher to find out how, of researchers to provide a description of this new research, of this new COVID-19 virus, and how it is affecting the body. Does it spread faster than the previous mutation? Things like that. That is typically descriptive research. So here the researcher has no control of the variables. Do you remember when we say no control of the variables? Do you remember the multitasking paper? Do you remember the multitasking paper? Can anyone remember the variables, at least name one variable that was being examined in that paper? Michael says emotional arousal. I think it was a positive. It was something about the emotional violence. There was a positive effect on emotional violence. Yeah, that was there was multitasking. It was multisensory activities versus unisensory activities. Do you remember that hypothesis? The hypothesis itself, it's in the hypothesis where you see the variables. There was the multisensory activities and the unisensory activities. Those were two variables that were being examined. So in other words, when the researchers got their participants in an experimental lab, they were strictly looking at those variables, multisensory activities versus the emotional valence, unisensory activity the multisensory activity in relation to emotional valence, unisensory activity in relation to emotional valence. In other words, let us say we pick Lucy. Lucy is one of the participants. Lucy sits in the chair, and she's hooked up to these monitors, and she's given multisensory activities. That means maybe she's playing a video game or listening to music, and the effect it has on her is measured. Then she's given a unisensory activity, maybe doing an assignment, and again, the effect it has on her emotions is measured. Okay? At that time, they don't care, they'll not bother maybe to find out if Lucy likes the color, or if Lucy had a fight with her friend the day before. They'll not bother about so many variables. They'll not bother maybe about what she ate for lunch, because there are so many things that are about a person. They won't bother about all those variables. They are strictly concerned with the effect it has on her emotions when she is dealing with multisensory activities and unisensory activities. Now, in other words, there is control of the variables. There is control of the variables. But when you're doing descriptive research, you have no control. In other words, you're going out to discover. You may have an idea of some of the variables, but not all of them. Yeah? You may not even have an idea how this variable affects the other. Do you get my point on descriptive research and control variables? Do I make sense there or no? Okay, so let's move on. Analytical research. So here, the researcher uses facts that is already available and analyzes them to make a critical evaluation. So take the example of the multitasking case. That was a critical evaluation to determine if one variable has an effect on this variable, or the other variable has an effect on this variable. So that the information was already available, but to actually determine if there's a correlation between these two variables. So that is critical evaluation, or that is analytical research. I hope that is clear. Now, the second set is qualitative research and quantitative. Now, as we go on, we must make clear that descriptive research can be qualitative research, analytical research can be quantitative, or vice versa. So it isn't to say that it's either or. Research can be descriptive and quantitative in nature, or descriptive and qualitative in nature. It can be analytical and quantitative in nature, or analytical and quantitative in nature. They can be one and the same. It just depends on what your research problem is and how you intend to tackle your research problem as a researcher. So we already have an idea on what quantitative research is, which is basically deductive research, where you're making measurements of variables. Yeah? Where you have measurements of variables. So quantitative research, first of all, is concerned with variables or values that can be expressed in numbers or numerical form. So quantitative research, we already know what it is from deductive research. Do you all remember deductive research from that lecture on philosophy? Research philosophy. Hello? Someone
Yes,
is asking,
madam.
yes, deductive research. I gave the example of Sherlock Holmes. Do we remember when we talked about it that it is how I think it was in this class where I gave the example of asking if there is somebody who is handsome or not.
Yes, that was the example.
Yes, that is typically quantitative research where we draw our conclusion based on the general, the most taken, the biggest number of values. Yeah, so that is typically quantitative research. So here we normally use it when we have, again, variables which we can measure, things like age, weight, duration. Now, for instance, if I was to do research to find out the typical description of an undergraduate student in Uganda. So I send out a questionnaire to all universities in Uganda, all universities, to get a description of who undergraduate students are. So I find out, for example, what school did they come from? What school is each? Did you attend for your A levels? What is your age? The state of your parents, like for example, if your parents are alive or dead, what is their income status? Are they working class? Then I find out your interests and so on and so forth, and what program you are taking and so on and so forth. Then I collect all this information. Then I start to carry out a statistical analysis, and I find out what's the average age of the bachelor student in Uganda. I carry out a statistical analysis, and maybe I find out the average age is maybe 22. Income status of parents or guardians, and or rather, what is their what is the profession of your parents, and then I find out that majority of the parents of undergraduate students, maybe for they're either bankers or they're accountants or they're lawyers, and I said this is the profession. This is the background. Yeah, the economic background of our bachelor students. Most of them are maybe middle income earners, or their parents are professionals as well. That's the majority. So, and then from there I make a generalization. Yeah, I make a generalization that a bachelor student in Uganda typically comes from a family with professional parents. They are of this average age, and majority come from schools from Kampala, and most likely these are private schools. Just based on that research. That is typically quantitative research. Am I making sense so far?
Yes, madam.
Okay, I hope so. So let us look at the next one, qualitative. This was quantitative, then we come to qualitative research. So this one is looking at also does look at variables or factors, but those which cannot be expressed in numbers or in numerical form, but that which can be expressed in terms of text or graphical form or pictures or anything like that. Yeah. Typically, what cannot be expressed as a numerical value. Let me just show you an example. Let me first stop sharing. I want to show you an example of such factors. Give me a minute, please. Just give me a minute, please. I want to show you something, a practical example. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. So this is an example from my thesis that I did. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
Okay, so here I used a picture in
madam.
research to express, to report that majority of community members had old phones. Here is an example, an old handset, over these featured phones. So here it wasn't about numbers, but to show this is a rural mobile phone user. This is who they are. This is the type of phones they can afford, and so on and so forth. So this is a typical example of something that you can't count it, but it is a fact or a variable that must be recognized if you are to understand a rural mobile phone user. Okay? So this is an example. Whereas if you are using numerical, look at, you see this example now of graphs, which was showing people who use, that we have mobile phone users who have their personal phones and those who share. Yeah. Then there were others who showed they have their personal phone, they use a friend or a neighbor's phone, or they have no phone. So this one could be expressed numerically, and this one is not numerical. This is typically qualitative research where you use description, you use text, things like that, or a picture to bring out to describe something. Have we understood that point?
Yes, madam.
Okay, I hope so. So back to our lecture. So typically qualitative research is anything that is not going to be numbered. But as you could see from my research, you can have both. You can have the numerical side, you can have the quantitative side, you can have the qualitative side. So here with qualitative research, you're investigating the reasons for human behavior. Why do people think or do the things they do? Yeah. So the aim of qualitative research is to discover the underlying motives. So normally here we use observation, we carry out interviews, unlike qualitative research, which focuses on surveys. Yeah. So qualitative research is meant to increase our understanding of why things are done the way they are done. I hope so far we are clear what quantitative research is and qualitative research is. Okay, I hope that silence means consent. Let's move to the next one, which is conceptual research and empirical research. Yes, we have someone's hand is raised. Douglas, you have a question?
Yes, madam.
Yes, please.
I'm asking, when you're making research, can you make both qualitative and quantitative?
You can have mixed methods. Do you remember when we looked at research philosophies? We had positivist, interpretivism or phenomenology, and then realist. So realist is when you decide to have mixed methods. Or in other situations, people decide to say, now I'll give you the example of my research, which was largely qualitative, although I used a survey, a quantitative technique to validate my findings on the qualitative side. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, or I need to explain further.
I've understood, madam.
Okay, yeah, so you can combine the two. So conceptual research, it's also sometimes referred to as analytical research. So this one is when you are formulating an idea or a theory. Formulating an idea or a theory from existing ideas. So you can carry out research with the intention of coming up with a new theory, a new method, like the example I gave you of a new system development method, or a model, something that coming up with a new concept for something. But you are basing it on existing ideas or theories. So again, this kind of research, we don't expect at undergraduate level that you'd carry out this kind of research. No, we don't expect that. Another question, is qualitative research used in practical or only in academic research? Now, let me answer this more clearly. Shamira, all research is academic. All research is academic, yeah? Whether it's qualitative or quantitative. Now, you're asking, is qualitative research used in practical or any academic research? The type of research you pick, type of research you end up using depends on your research problem. So Shamira, I'm going to use a practical situation, let's say I'm going to pick a research area from the field. Let me first stop sharing. And I'm going to share, let me get a whiteboard. So Shamira, let me pick, or can somebody give me a possible research area in the field of IT? Can somebody give me any research area, any area where we can do research in IT?
Madam, what about communication around campus or community?
Communication around campus or communicate. Okay, what do we want to do? We want to improve communication. We want to digitize communication. What do we want to do?
We want to ease communication.
Between who and who?
Between maybe the security personnel, between the administration and maybe the students or community members.
Or do we have any particular area between security personnel and community members? Let's pick a specific area. Let's narrow it down. Shall we say it could be between Between students, it could be between students and lecturers, it could be between students and administration. Maybe it's a non-academic communication. Shall we narrow it down? Let us
Let's
pick
go with students and lecturers.
between students and
Lecturers.
students and lecturers. So let me first put here students. Then we have another one, lecturers. And what we want to do in between, where is the pencil? Else I saw a pencil. Let me delete that. Oh, sorry. Oh, I don't know, I can delete this one. But anyway, let me just put a link between these two. And I put a text here saying improve communication. So for us to improve the communication, what do we want to do? How do we want to improve this communication? How do we want to improve this communication? IT students, let's think, how do we improve?
I think, Madam, improving on the...
Sorry, you're breaking. How do we improve communication? Let us say we design, pardon, yes, Douglas?
And I'm improving on the reliability of the medium to use.
Which medium is that?
Madam, if I'm to
It
say
might
that,
be the use of phones.
Let us now, if we want to improve, if we want to improve communication, don't lecturers and students already have phones? Are we going to tap into MTN's network to improve MTN's network? What are we going to do?
Madam, we can improve on communication through use of technology.
Which technology? Do we want to design an app? What do we want to do? Design an app, implement an app which is already existing? What do we want to do?
To develop an app.
Okay, so we want to design an app for communication between lecturers and students. Now, this app could be smartphone based, whatever it is. This is how we want to improve, not so. Let me first erase this. Oh, undo. Let me first redo. So I want to. So we want to design that up. Not so? So we want to design that up. So now, first thing we want to do is we come up with our specifications, design the app, implement it. Okay? So after implementation, what is the thing we want to determine? We want to determine if we've actually brought about improvement of communication, not so?
Yes, madam.
Yes.
So now,
Yes, madam.
how are we going to measure that improvement of communication? We can choose, we want to tackle this either the qualitative way or quantitative way. Yeah? If we were to
Yes.
do this the qualitative way, the quantitative way, we first have to determine what constitutes improved communication. In other words, the variables. Yeah, the variables, things like would measure things like improved communication. Let us say, I'm just guessing here, but maybe there's a theory which even guides what variables are there. But you can send a query to a lecturer and receive. You can send a successful query and receive a response. You can receive a response. It can allow multiple means of communication. That means I can send a picture, I can send a voice note easily. Is accessible at any time. That means maybe network is available or things like that. You have a number of questions, and that the respondent can say yes or no. I've sent us a query successfully, or no, I have not. I do not receive a response even when the lecturer sends. I'm only able to send maybe text. I can't send others. So this would be the quantitative format. If you decided to do qualitative, yeah, if you decided to do qualitative, you would sit down with maybe 1 or 2 lecturers and have an interview, yeah? So you'd ask, how do you ask the lecturer, how do you feel about this application? How do, have you used it? In what format did you use it? You know, you ask a question like, have you used it? Have you used the app? When did you use it? Then you can ask, how did you feel when you are using it? When you are using it, did you have any problem? Who helped you, and who did you contact when you had a problem? Did they help you? Yeah? Do you see the difference between the two? The two ways of querying.
Yes, madam.
Both of them will still give you an answer of whether there's been an improvement of communication. This one will specifically focus on improved communication. The qualitative one will look at not only if there's improvement, but if there are any other underlying issues, like is there support, technical support? How did you feel when you are using it? And the person may be able to tell you, oh, maybe it was a little bit difficult for me. Maybe I'm not so used to using these new apps. I need more guidance. There will be other things that will come out. So both of them are inquiries. They both give you results which you can report back. Okay, it doesn't matter whether it is as long as you're doing research, you can select which approach you want to use, which type you want to use, but it all depends on what your research question is. This one is strictly focused on whether there is improvement of communication. The qualitative one is focused on not only if there's improvement, but are there underlying issues that are affecting improved communication. They want to understand the user's context even further. So this one, quantitative goes broad, qualitative goes deep. I don't know if I've answered your question. Shamira.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, so it
Thank
doesn't, they are all academic. They are all academic, it's just that one is going deep to understand underlying issues. The other one is going broad to make a generalization, whether there's improvement or not. Yeah, I hope everyone has understood the difference between the two. I hope so. But anyway, let's continue on conceptual and empirical research. So conceptual, like I had said earlier, is involved with development of theories or a method or something that is there to improve existing theories. So this theory would be intended to help explain certain situations. So take an example, those who developed the term theory, that was conceptual research because they were coming up with a new theory, yeah? Those who developed the system development methods, that was typically conceptual research. Now, at your level, of course, at undergraduate level, we don't expect you to be developing theories. We expect this slightly at master's level, but more at PhD level, but not necessarily at your level. Now we have empirical research. So here, normally, it involves testing a hypothesis or research that outputs, or research that has an output by making use of methods. So not just, when we say testing hypothesis, we're normally referring to, hypothesis refers to quantitative research, but even qualitative research can be empirical. For example, if you're describing something, you want to provide a description of something or finding out underlying issues that are affecting some phenomena. That is also empirical research. So here there is, you're clearly either using a certain concept or a method, and you're bringing out and proving something, you're evaluating or justifying why something is being done. So again, evidence here can be gathered either in a qualitative form or qualitative form, whichever way it is, that is empirical research. Do we have any questions so far as conceptual research and empirical research? Any question? Okay, if there's none, just I want to leave you with some points for discussion, which we shall what we're going to do, I'm going to activate a discussion forum on Moodle, and we have this discussion. There are these particular points that I've put up, and I'm also going to upload some more articles for you to read. So I'll first, I want to give it an entire week because this topic I haven't discussed it with others. I'll give it up to beginning of next week, so that we discuss this in detail, because we want to determine what we want to be able to understand these research types clearly, quite clearly before we move to the next topic of research methods. So I'm going to upload some more articles for you on Moodle, as well as these lecture slides. Then I activate a discussion forum on Moodle. Do you have any questions so far? Yes, Judith, you have a question? No, madam. Okay. Okay, I hope, but this closes our topic for research types. The next things we're going to look at are research methods. So we'll hold that off for next week. I just want to put up some articles up for you. And then we have our discussion forum, then our first assignment. Is that okay?
Yes, madam, it's okay.
Okay, now in that note, I would like if you can send me your groups, because your first assignment is going to be in groups. Okay, so if you could send me your groups ahead of time, and I input them in Moodle so that when you upload the assignment, it should be okay.
Madam, each group should have how many members?
Let us say a minimum of 5 members per group.
Okay, madam.
So if we don't have any questions, shall we close off for today? Do we have any question?
Excuse me, madam.
Yes, please.
I request to clarify more on what we are going to do about the discussion.
The discussion is based on these questions. Okay, let me just reshare. So I'm asking you to search the internet for research that has been done and classify it as any of the research types. Look at the university context, identify areas where you may do research. For instance, I would look at mobile phone using in teaching and learning. What would your research, where would you research and where would you classify your research? So this is just going to be discussion, it's not an assignment. It's just a discussion. I'll upload some articles. I also expect you to look for some articles.
All right, madam, thank you.
Okay, thank you too. Any other question?